Rocco here, and welcome. Today, we flip the pages of time back to January 1st, 1918, a day wrapped in sunlight and uncertainty. America had been at war for just 8 months, and every town in the country carried the weight of names newly carved into telegrams. The whole nation held its breath, hoping boys would come home, fearing they would not. And yet, in the middle of all that unease, the Tournament of Roses committee made a curious decision. They would play a football game, not a college contest. Those rosters had been thinned like winter wheat. No, this would be something different. 2 military teams, born from the new wartime camps that had become accidental athletic powerhouses. Mare Island Marines versus Camp Lewis Army. A football game in wartime America. Strange, symbolic, and, as it turned out, unforgettable. And tucked inside that story were 6 young men from Montana, players whose names time may have misplaced, but whose footprints were pressed into that California field all the same. Places like Camp Lewis in Washington State, and the Mare Island Marine Base outside San Francisco. Military base camps made of barracks and willpower, each holding tens of thousands of men learning to march, shoot, and become something larger than themselves. But these camps didn't just make soldiers. They created athletic powerhouses. Men who'd played college and semi-pro football found themselves wearing uniforms again. Not school colors, but Army khaki and Marine blue. Coaches emerged from the ranks. Rivalries formed. Football became a crucial part of camp life. Discipline, conditioning, morale. Some camps fielded good teams. A few fielded great ones. Mare Island and Camp Lewis became juggernauts. Meanwhile, in Pasadena, the Tournament of Roses committee faced a dilemma. Should they hold a New Year's football game in wartime? Canceling it felt defeatist. Playing it felt risky. Then came the compromise. Let the game serve the war effort, where military teams would take the field and America would see its sons, strong, unified, ready. And so, the decision was made. Mare Island Marines versus Camp Lewis Army. A wartime Rose Bowl, unlike any before. Before the war dressed them in uniform, these players were something simpler, be it by roots or by choice. They were Montana boys. They came from towns where winters were long, grit stood tall, and football. Football was a kind of inheritance, a place where pride was measured not in trophies, but in toughness. From those fields, 6 Montana players found their way to the wartime gridiron. A few had worn the colors of University of Montana and some Montana State, while another earned his on a high school dirt field. Mare Island claimed 3. Keith Ambrose, a Missoula standout and early Montana Grizzly fullback, who carried that straight-ahead, no-frills brand of football into the Marines lineup. Lawson Sanderson, a 3-sport Grizzly workhorse whose Montana years taught him to attack every inch of field the same way he'd later attack the sky. Fred Moulton, a Butte High marvel and a Montana letterman whose Copper City toughness followed him into the Marines line like a birthright. Camp Lewis answered with its own Montana trio. Sam Cook, a Montana halfback whose instincts provided Camp Lewis the poise and steadiness it leaned on during the 1917 season. Anchor Christensen, Montana State's reliable guard, who was stubborn, durable, and built for trench duty long before Camp Lewis handed him a uniform. Emmett D., the Butte High champion who carried the grit of the mining city straight into the Camp Lewis lineup. They enlisted. They boarded trains, and somewhere between the mountains they left behind and the barracks they stepped into, football, that old familiar companion, gave them a fleeting return to the lives they knew before the world tilted, a breath of home before fate pulled all 6 toward Pasadena. Tournament Park wasn't the grand stadium we know today. No sweeping bowl, no towering stands, just a field, a wooden grandstand, and a crowd packed shoulder to shoulder. But the stakes, those were enormous. The whistle blew at 2:30. What followed was wartime football, trench work disguised as sport. No fancy passing, no sweeping trick plays, just bodies colliding, 3 yards at a time. Mare Island struck first, a 31-yard drop kick between the uprights by Keith Ambrose. Camp Lewis responded with grit. Montana players anchoring key defensive stands that never made headlines, but mattered on every play. But Mare Island had depth, experience, momentum, and a 9-7 halftime lead. A second-half surge sealed it. Another hard-earned touchdown, another Ambrose field goal, and a reminder of why the Marines were favored. Camp Lewis fought to the whistle, held their dignity, showed their heart, but the scoreboard told the story. Mare Island Marines, victors of the 1918 Rose Bowl. What the scoreboard didn't tell was what came next. When the crowd left Tournament Park, the game didn't ripple through newspapers the way great college games did. There were no celebrations waiting back home, just orders, trains, and the long shadow of a world at war. For those players, the game that became embedded into Rose Bowl lore wasn't an ending. It was an intermission. Most went back to war. Some came home changed. A few didn't come home at all. And those 6 Montana boys, they folded that afternoon into their lives the way a man tucks a letter into his coat. Quiet, private, close to the heart. But here's the thing. Legacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a single moment that steadies you when the dark closes in. That winter day wasn't played against the war. It was played because a nation needed reminding it still had a pulse. And somehow, without fanfare, 6 sons of Montana helped keep that heartbeat alive. And if truth be told, some memories whisper, but they never really fade.